Imagine supernatural horrors lurking, waiting to enter our world from other dimensions. Every shadow holds a secret, every dark corner a threat, but a team stands ready. Project Threshold. Their mission: protect us from darkness. Join us. ProjectThreshold.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Dylan on with me, and he got in touch after he saw my Instagram post and said, I do have some experiences. And Dylan, from the sounds of it, we are going to be talking about Wisconsin, Missouri area of the country. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I know that the list that you sent along to me, thank you for doing that, does start in childhood. So I would probably prefer to start in order if we could, but that's completely up to you.
Yeah, we can go right in chronological order for sure. Yeah, I guess I've been, a lifelong experiencer, mainly, with ghosts. I used to live next to the Wisconsin Child Center. It's an old orphanage. I believe it started in the late 1800s and was functional until the 1970s. And my father built a house about less than 150 yards from there. And I remember things happening right after we moved in. And it was often children, the sounds of children playing outside my windows, lots of giggling, laughing, crying, and coughing. You'd hear little tapping on the windows. It was a split level house, and the sound of a rubber ball being kicked aside against the side of the house. And this would happen all times of the year, whether it was below zero, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 11 at night, sometimes during the day. And when it would happen in the wintertime, there would never ever be any footprints outside. And they would be close enough to where you would see footprints. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if they got inside the house too, because sometimes the doorknobs would jiggle on our bedroom doors downstairs. I mean, this happened numerous times.
Now, what about your parents? Or did you have siblings as well, and everybody would experience the same thing?
Yeah, my dad, I think he was kind of he would probably, deny it. I guess that would be it's just in your head, or it's just the house settling as a new house after, you moved in, or, but it happened all through high school. And, and then years later, it was learning about this place and kind of going on little ghost hunts with my friends. And we would hear chains rattling when we'd be playing flashlight tag, and, oh, this place is haunted. And then, I dare you to look inside the windows of this place and never ever see anything. But we would get chased home by, the sounds of these chains.
So how much of the building was left when you guys actually built and moved into this home?
It's still standing to this day. It's utilized as a haunted house for it was the Boys and Girls Club, but I think the JCs run it now. But it's a haunted house for fundraising for the October season.
So were there rumors of mistreatment, abuse, or even deaths associated?
Absolutely. I remember hearing rumors of children being chained in the basement, because it was originally called the something school for neglected children. I can't remember the full title of it. It's been years since. But then they changed the name to the Wisconsin Children's Center, I believe.
It always has
But
such
I
a
mean,
bright, shiny, positive name, like it's such a good thing. And usually with these centers, especially those that are built way back, they all have these same horrible stories. Do you guys, do
oh,
you maybe
abuse,
wonder?
neglect.
Yeah, it's always that way, and those are the kids that needed the most love. It's so sad. So, do you wonder
Hmm.
if there were any deaths that, and it not
Oh,
that it
there's
well, not that it would
yeah, there was
take.
like
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a grave site with like 300 unmarked graves, about
Oh,
100 yards the other way on the golf course. They're just numbered. And I think like the mid 2000s, they finally got names attached to the numbers. But the mark, I don't even think the kids are buried there. Honestly, I think they were just probably buried out in the field behind my house.
yeah, that's what I was gonna
That's
say.
just
Is
my
that
theory. Just with all the activity, like
yeah, it
because you would
seems
hear like the little pitter patter of feet, and
yeah. I'll bet maybe even the
it's
house
just
was built upon some unmarked graves.
oh, it's quite possible. I mean,
You know,
yeah.
the tapping on the windows. Was any of the tapping up on like the second story windows where there shouldn't be any way to
Um,
stand there?
I would hear them. I used to have a bedroom upstairs, and my brother moved downstairs, so I would hear the tapping downstairs, but I would hear a lot of the giggling and stuff from the upstairs.
So a lot of this activity was not really talked about amongst you guys that much. I mean, obviously your friends. It sounds like you guys would maybe talk
Yeah,
about this
yeah.
and have things going on. But what about the fam?
They they really wouldn't talk about it. My mom would, and my mom had continued to hear things after I had moved out, and that was the house that she stayed at until I had to help her move into the nursing home last year. That's kind of when I had the hitchhiker experience too.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's all kind of like linked because like a lot of weird stuff happened there. Because like my mom ended up seeing like a little girl in like a mirror because they ended up getting like these mirrored like closet doors, and she would tell me that she would see like a little girl in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
which could be linked. But my
Mm-hmm.
mom is also a little interesting in the brain, to put it lightly.
So the activity, from the sounds of it, never really waned, even after you guys moved out.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. And years later, I learned that there was like a tuberculosis ward in or a wing in the orphanage as well. And I don't know how many children had died of TB there, but I would hear them. It was a wet cough, a child's cough, at like 1 or 2 in the morning on like a December evening that was pushing below zero, and like kids like sniffling, and
Would you ever
it
hear
just kind
it?
of makes you wonder like whether it be like stone tape of or like echoes of trauma
Yeah.
causing the haunting, and to be like, oh well, that kind of sucks if these children are damned to have like tuberculosis in the afterlife.
Do you feel like most of it was a residual, or that some of it was, in fact, interactive?
See, that's the thing though. Like, if it was residual, I don't think it would go out of the way to like tap on my windows and like trying to get me to come out and play or something. Because I think that's what they were trying to do, to like interact with me. And like, oh, new kid and like moved in down the street. We want to go
Mm-hmm.
play with him. Like that gives me the feeling of like intelligence. But it's like, well, if that's the case, like it just bums me out. Like a child with like an ailment or whatever special conditions, or to have that in the afterlife is just kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I agree that things like the tapping and stuff does sound a little bit
Yeah,
more interactive, but
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'll bet that the coughing might be a little bit more, as you say, like a stone tape. But then again,
Yeah.
do you recall these coughing sounds coming around the same time? Every night or certain nights, anything like that?
It would happen I guess randomly. It wasn't like every night. I'd maybe get like a 2-3 month like hiatus from any activity, and then
Mm.
things would kind of spike up for like 3 or 4 days in a row. Or
No pattern to that, I guess, though. So,
yeah, it was just absolutely random, but it was frequent. It was frequent, but I just kind of got used to it. Or like, oh, I'm not going to open my curtains and look outside. Hell no.
oh, see, that's a bummer, though, because
Yeah,
I would
I know.
imagine
Oh,
that
yeah,
would
in retrospect, it totally is.
I mean, it changed how you interacted with your own home. You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you guys ever remember trying to speak out loud to anything? Like, what do you want? Who are you? What are you doing? Anything like that?
Mainly like the next day, I go outside and, what was out here, or, there's no footprints in the snow. Or I think my dad had yelled out like in frustration, like thinking it was us, I was like, we're inside. I vaguely remember something like that, but, you kind of like play it off like it's the neighbor kids or something.
What percentage of the activity would you say was inside and versus outside?
Oh, I'd say 95% was outside and
Hmm.
5% inside.
Like they couldn't cross the threshold. But then again, that might
Yeah.
add to some of the stone tape theory, because if the house wasn't
Yeah.
there while they were there, then they wouldn't really
Hmm.
come in to interact. But then again, that might be
Yeah.
the exact opposite of what I just said. If it wasn't there, they should just be able to walk right through things. I don't know.
No, absolutely. It's
Nothing
quite
but
possible.
questions,
I'm,
right?
I'm definitely on board with that. I think our traumas that we experience do kind of shed off on us, and what absorbs that in our environment. It can
Yeah.
definitely. I don't know. Maybe that can end up after time. Have, I guess, kind of its own intelligence, or if we assign it or allot it to.
So your mom moved out, and then I'm sure someone else purchased the house or moved in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, last year I sold the house for my mom. I had to act as like power of attorney. So yeah, I guess I'll jump right to that because that's kind of like ties in, my closure with the house, and like probably my scariest experience with the house. So my mom had a medical issue, and I had to act as power of attorney to sort the house out, clean it out and get it ready for sale or put it on the market. I was into the process of like I had to go deal with. She had a payee that I had somebody, deal with her finances and stuff like that, so I didn't have to deal with that headache. That was at a place called Rolling Hills, which was an old nursing home, and there was another like administration like building out in front, and they recently demolished the nursing home. And I went to go drop off a bunch of paperwork for them to sign, and then took that to the house, and I was wrapping up and cleaning the house. This is after like the second dumpster, and there was a bunch of old paint cans from like 40 years. It's like, oh, we might need to touch up the house with this color that had been painted over. But I guess the rules of like having a dumpster here, like you have to like dry out the paint cans in order to. My mom had like a boyfriend, and he was kind of a squatter. Like he just didn't pay rent, and like I thought he was gone, or I thought I had been there for a little over an hour, and I was opening up these paint cans and pouring them, with mixing it with kitty litter to dry it all out, so I could throw them in the dumpster. And I was in the garage, and I look over because there was a basement door in the garage that kind of like went down like 5 stairs, and there's a man standing there, just standing there staring at me, and his eyes kind of looked sunken in a little bit. We made eye contact, like we looked at each other, we became aware of each other, and then he kind of slunk inside the house. And I'm like, yo, what the hell? And I'm like, I'm unarmed. And all I had was a box knife. And I kind of like flipped open the box knife, and I'm like, took one step forward, and he kind of like, I saw his like shadow go in the house further. So I like noped out into the driveway where I had eyes on there. And I'm like, I have to call law enforcement. I had to call the cops, and the cops came in, and they did a sweep of the house, and there was nobody in there. I guess I don't know what to do. Is like, did I just call the cops on a ghost? Because like I didn't think it was a ghost. I thought it was like a frogger or a squatter or like someone my mom's boyfriend knew. Or the cops, like the only place they didn't check was the attic, and the back door was still unlocked because I kind of propped a chair against the back of it, and there was like a Swiffer leaning against the door. I remember, and yeah, the cops came out and said the place was clear, that all the windows were secure, and the only place they didn't go was the attic. And then when I left, I'm like, oh, well, I better lay a bunch of flour down in front of this like walkway, the only access way to the attic. I came back. It was not the next day, but the day after, and there was no footsteps from the attic to the thing. So I don't know. And my theory is like somebody followed me home from either the nursing home, like the rubble, because I had to walk right past the rubble and deal with that. So I don't know if somebody followed me home or what. But like, yeah, we made eye contact, and like I felt like I saw like an intruder, not like a ghost. But I didn't take eyes off that back door or the front door because I was like in the driveway when I called the cops, and then when they walked through, there was nobody there.
Unless he's just like staying up there indefinitely, just never came down, right? Like it's just in the attic forever somehow.
But I had left though the flour there for over a week. So unless he was still up there, like
Yeah.
then it's on the owner of the house at that point.
Oh my God, that. You know what? That is like you said. You noped out of there. That's creepy either way. I mean, I would rather honestly have the ghost than have it be a squatter. That I've heard like
Same here.
insane
Absolutely.
stories of
Same
people
here.
living in walls and stuff. I'm like, no.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that is like total ick. Like
Yeah.
but our eyes met. We looked at each other. Like, a lot of ghost encounters, from my understanding, like it doesn't happen that way. You know what I mean? It's just like they have their own agenda, or they're just looking to terrorize you. But like our eyes met. We looked at each other. I could draw this guy right now for you. His hair looked all like, I don't know. It looked like one of those early or those old like baby dolls with like the hair that's kind of like hair plugs.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was like kind of like kind of greasy, and his eyes looked sunken in, kind of like he was like maybe messed out. I don't know.
See, so I like that. So you're like going, well, he did look like a real person. There were slightly off things about him, but then again, when you look back, is there anything ethereal about that man at all?
I mean, the fact that like the police didn't find him.
Yeah.
And the windows were locked.
His appearance,
inside.
though. His appearance.
And there's like, I remember watching like on an episode of like, it was like Paranormal Caught on Camera or something like that. And there was like a little boy playing with his phone or his mom's phone or something like that. In maybe like the Philippines or something like that. And his like grandmother recently passed away from like cancer or something like that. And then like he was like was on TikTok or something like that. And then like she was like behind him, and her eyes looked kind of similar, I guess, kind of like sunken in a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of what that reminded me of, but I think meth does the same shit to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or no sleep, or I don't know. Either way, but I felt like I was threatened though, for sure. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like I'm not carrying. I need to take a step back and actually let law enforcement, because I thought it was a person. Otherwise, I wouldn't have called the cops. I would have,
Well, I just
I thought it was a ghost. I would have tried to make contact myself at this age.
I just feel like it's a little odd that they didn't check the attic. Did they say why they wouldn't go up to the attic?
There were like 4 of them, and none of them wanted to.
What?
Yeah, no, I swear, yeah.
Isn't that
And
strange?
one of those cops is the guy that bought the house from me.
What?
Yeah,
Oh, so I guess
I
it
sold the
was.
house to a. Maybe he was like, "Oh, this is a haunted house. I'm going to take this house." I've heard stories because I'm sure they've seen their shit and handled. You know, I'm sure other houses in that block have seen or heard. You
Right.
know,
Right.
children playing out at night. Because I was friends with one of the girls that would volunteer at the haunted house to help get it ready for every year, and she was like, I think one of their creative directors, and she had experiences of her own. Like, you know, I think she was like pinched or something like that, and they would often like knock over like displays, and they were really, I guess, mischievous, and they would interact with people. And I think that's kind of an intelligent thing.
So, from, if that was a ghost, he essentially, or whoever it was, whatever it was actually, helped you to sell the home because the cop got a little tour and he said, I like this house enough to buy it. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about his interest as well. If he's actually
Yeah.
like, oh, because he had you know two children, and he had two children and his wife, and I kind of joked about it like when I signed the paperwork, we were closing on the house. Then I'm like, oh, it's not haunted. Kind of winked at him, like,
You're like,
that
except for
matter.
whatever's up in the attic, which you
Yeah,
already know a
yeah,
little bit about that. Yeah, that's just
yeah, yeah,
strange that
yeah,
they wouldn't go up to the attic if they're usually
yeah.
a house.
Unless they were just like, unless they were coming me back, they're like, oh, we did check it, and we're going
Maybe.
to tell you that we didn't. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
I would hope like between four of them there would be, you know.
Maybe they have trauma where they fell through attic floors to the floor
Maybe.
below or something. There's like an unspoken cop thing. They're like, we don't go in attics.
Yeah, maybe. All they had to do was like pop open the board and kind of, you know, do a 360 with a flashlight and be like, ah,
Right.
clear, you know.
How big of a space it was, the attic in that house?
It wasn't like, you know, I don't think there were any boards, you know, maybe for like a service of like a pipe or something like that or event. I don't know. I hadn't been up there. I was just kind of slowly working my way up the because there was like a closet and then there was like the attic portion.
I mean, could you stand up in there,
But
move
it
around in there?
extended. It was the whole length of like the whole house. I mean, you could probably stand up in there for sure.
Okay. Now, would you, or have you since you did sell it to that police officer, have you wondered, oh, it'd be cool to get in touch with him and see if he and his family are having the same type of activity?
Oh, I think about that a lot. I wonder every time that house comes up to my my mind. I'm like, is being lived in by somebody else, and I wonder if or what or maybe he was an experiencer and believer, and he was into that. I don't know. So I would like to kind of sit down with him at some point, be like, hey, this is what happened to me because I didn't go into all my experiences, and they were actually kind of nice about they didn't make me feel dumb or anything like that. Like they kind of looked at me like, oh, we've seen some shit, we
Right.
can't explain it. And I can't imagine, like, oh, you hear, stories about law enforcement, like driving through ghosts like all the time, or so I'm sure they've seen some stuff. And I guess where you choose to shelf it is the thing.
And I know that after you and it's you and your brother. Just is that who was in
Hmm.
the house? Okay, so I know that after you and your brother moved out, it sounds like your
Yeah.
parents still had activity. So I'm wondering how much would have changed after you guys moved out, and also now this police officer and his family have kids, so that if you have children spirits in the house, that has to be attractive to them to
Hmm.
have fellow kids in the home, right? I mean, that's just where my mind
Yeah.
goes. I could be way off, but
That's what I was like thinking too. I think it was like the tapping on the windows was to try and get me to come outside and play, or trying to engage me in some way, shape or form of and I think some instinct in me is like, oh, maybe you shouldn't go play hide and seek at 4 in the morning,
I mean, it did scare you,
in the middle of
right?
January. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were times where I was just like too scared to even like look out the window or
Yeah.
and I think I did muster courage on a few occasions to look out the window and there was nothing. So I was just like, oh, there's gonna be nothing out there. Or I think I just got to the point too where I just like I'm just gonna go back to bed.
Right. I mean, what do you do, really? You just kind of get used to it in a
Yeah,
weird sort of way.
yeah,
You got to live, got to
yeah. Because
sleep
yeah, yep,
as best you can,
it
I
did,
guess.
and it didn't. I don't think it registered as like serious trauma to me to where
Right.
like I wasn't like too afraid to where it affected anything else. It obviously created some fascination to kind of be into the paranormal today
Absolutely.
or seeking those answers.
Although I will say that you and your friends going to the actual building and then going back home, and on the way back home, you're hearing like chains and things. That's
Oh
pretty
yeah,
horrific.
it sounded like a dog. It sounded like a dog was chasing us. And
Oh,
then you would finally you'd make it to my backyard because it was like you go out the back door and then there was a field and then there was the family children's center or the child center was right there. I think some of those buildings too. There was a series of buildings over there. I think they're connected by tunnels as well,
oh
or it
boy.
used to be. I think. And then there was the old kindergarten, and that had like a old like bunker type thing. So I'm sure like whatever would be out. It was like, oh, children are out playing. It's after dark, and let's have fun with them. But it just and then you hear like the stories of like or the I guess rumors of children being chained in the basement of this
Right.
place, or I can't, confirm or deny that, but like, you hear that and then you're like, oh, I heard chains in the backyard. And I turn around, there's no dog chasing me, but I was definitely being chased by something.
Wow. And I just wanted to point out really quickly because I heard your kitty cat for a quick
Mhm.
second. And I think it was before
Oh,
we started officially that I mentioned, oh, I
mm,
hear a kitty cat. So everyone that was not a child, like saying hello or anything, it was Dylan's cat in the background making a little cameo because I'll
yeah.
get emails like, I heard a child's voice. No, not
Mhm.
maybe later, but that
No.
time I could tell it was the kitty cat. So I just want to say that real quick. But yeah, when you're talking about 300 300 unmarked graves is so
Yep.
incredibly sad.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was TB, polio, all the popular diseases of the time.
Yeah,
And
that's wild to live next to a place like
it's
that.
just the thought of like, children not being loved or having
Yeah.
normal Christmases or, like,
Yeah.
growing up in the 80s and I'm like, oh, I got my GI Joes. And then you're like, oh man, there's little kids outside or, like they don't have anything, don't even have a mom or dad or,
And they're being abused on top of it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Society was
There's
pretty cruel to,
nothing darker than that.
yeah,
Is anything having to do
absolutely.
with kids, that those are the people we got to string up or put them under in the
Oh,
tunnel with the
absolutely.
chains. That's what I'm all about. Let's eye for an eye stuff. I don't
Yeah,
know.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
All right, so the next thing on your list is a smoke entity.
Yeah, it was around, I think it was equinox, or not equinox, but the winter solstice of 2000. I was living in St. Louis and I was living with some friends. I'm in college, or well, I'm taking time off from college, and I was getting ready to come home to Wisconsin. My roommate and his buddy were working on a computer. My friend Nick is his friend. He left for the night. Okay. I was staying in the living room. I was sleeping on a futon. That was kind of like my bedroom. Like normal college situations of living friends living together in an apartment. My buddy left, and my roommate, he was a snowplow driver, and he was on call. I remember because he was on call for it was like Missouri gets these infamous ice storms, and he was like dreading. I was like, oh, we were supposed to get this ice storm, and I was like nervous to fly back to Wisconsin the next day for Christmas. Everybody went to bed. I kind of passed out on the futon. And then I woke in the middle of the night. I saw what I thought was my roommate looking out the window. He was like kind of pulling the blinds down. And then I like leaned forward to grab a smoke and have a cigarette and like talk to him. And I was like, "Oh, is it snowing?" And there's like no response. And like as I like grabbed the smoke off the, it was like in a pack on the floor. And I remember like leaning back, I felt this pressure kind of like push me down, kind of like, I guess like what sleep paralysis would be. But there's like some elements of this that don't line up with like what people say of sleep paralysis. Because I remember like leaning forward, grabbing the smoke. This thing just was ignoring me. And I thought it was my roommate. And like I kind of came to, and like that thing's not even human. It's pulling the blinds down and like looking out the blinds, and like there's light from the parking lot kind of like illuminating like the side of its face. And it's like flesh was like, it had like a human form, but it was like really, really tall. It had to have been like 11, 12 feet tall, because it was like the back was towards the ceiling, and then it was like hunched over, down, leaning down, and it had like its giant hands. And it was like pulling the blinds down and just staring out in the parking lot. I don't know what it was looking at. I felt restraint. This thing just like ignored me, and I just like, I wasn't scared. I was not scared. I was like, what the? I was scared at first, initially thinking like somebody broke into my house. That's not my roommate standing there. But then I got like calm, and I just like laid there and just watched this thing. And it's like, I guess its flesh was like made of smoke, and it just kind of rolled over on itself and just like continually like just rolling and folding on itself. And like I don't remember seeing its legs or feet. It was almost like just a mass, like it came up from like, I don't know. The closest thing that I don't know. But I just remember not being like terrified, like what people say, like of like, these sleep paralysis demons or whatever people experience. And like this thing didn't care about me, just ignored me, just continued to look out there. But yet again, I was still restrained. And then this felt like it went on for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. So I started to like kind of like come to, and then this thing just kind of like turns around to me and kind of like shushes me. And then the front door was like wide open to the outside to expose like a layer of dusting of snow. And my roommate had a cat that would try to go outside any chance he could get. And he was sitting under the kitchen table with his hair on end, like freaked out. And I guess this is kind of like maybe not obsessed with like researching that. This is kind of what got me into like the paranormal more so your podcast, because like your podcast has like such a vast array of like different types of experiences. And like the closest thing that I can actually feel what this thing was like a djinn. It's like, I guess djinn are often like never or rarely depicted like with having like feet, and like often have like giant hands and being born of like smokeless fire. And like this thing, I remember its face too. It had like really long nose, and then its teeth were like part of its lips. It's like its lips kind of like became its teeth, I guess. They seem kind of sharp, but like it was also made of smoke. And it was like a bluish gray, like smoke, just kind of folding in on itself. And it was kind of like hypnotic, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure that when you try to dismiss it, the problem is the cat saw it too. And it didn't want to go outside. It just wanted to stay where it was with its hair on end, not happy with whatever the hell that thing was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Plus the front door was wide open up to the street or the parking lot, and like that's my bedroom, so I'm locking that thing. It was a lock on the doorknob and a deadbolt every time.
So Nick was gone, the friend was gone, your roommate was on call. Do you recall at any point thinking or knowing for a fact that your roommate was also gone?
My roommate was still asleep. They never called him.
Okay, so he
Yeah, he
was
was still in
definitely
bed, and
still there.
he never interacted with me. So I was totally on my own, and nobody else remembered anything weird that night. It was like, I was like, maybe they were there for one of my roommates, or they had an experience, or like, I don't know.
Does it really need to use the front door though? That's what's wild about it. What's with the
See,
front
that's the
door
thing.
being
That's the
open?
thing. Yeah, that was wide open. There were no tracks. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's made of like vapor or smoke or something, and there was a chimney right there. That's the thing that really baffles me. But like, I don't understand how the front door was open, and I know I locked that because I saw Nick out.
Also, it's creepy to me when they're doing just weird things that don't make sense. Like him just staring out the window for most of that experience is odd.
Yeah, totally ignoring me. Like it didn't there, but I would accept that it is sleep paralysis, but I don't understand how it interacted with. Or the cat was terrified. It didn't matter when that cat would try to run out every time that door was open.
And then it shushed you.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like in a way of like, oh, no one will believe you, which is fine. I had that experience, like, and it also didn't scare me. Like I was actually kind of like pacified. In retrospect, yeah, it's kind of scary, but like now, and I don't know, but during the experience, I was not like crippled with fear. Like I wanted to talk to this thing. I was curious. Like,
I mean, when you talk to your
but
roommates about it, I know that they didn't see or anything that night, but what did they ever say? Oh, yeah, there is some weird shit in this apartment.
no, not at all. Not at all. That was like the first time anybody really experienced anything. Well, and it was me, but like nobody else had any weird experiences at all there. I mean, I have no clue.
Do you think there's any chance that it has something to do with your childhood home?
I mean, maybe it's still attached to me today.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that you weren't completely terrified, because I feel like seeing that, especially with the description you gave, by all accounts, it should be a horrifying experience. So I guess that's good that it did whatever it did with its jinn mind or whatever the hell it is to calm you. Yeah. But then again, I don't know. With that physical description, also, I feel like what you said about the teeth essentially being part of the lips should be a standout item. So if that has sparked anything in anyone, please get in touch with me so I can pass it along to Dylan, because that's a very unique thing that you just brought up, I think.
Yeah, and its nose was like comically long too. It had to have stuck out from its face like 3 to 4 inches.
Wow, really?
And I remember it had really large hands as well. And I think that's kind of a characteristic too of like Jin as well. But I don't know if, or what, or maybe it was all inside my mind. But I still doesn't explain the cat or the front door being wide open. But, it being made of smoke, why didn't it just use the chimney?
And then you just went back to sleep and woke up in the morning, the door is locked, the cat's normal, everything's kosher.
Oh, I stayed awake after I came to when the door was open. I just stayed awake.
And then, but did it dissipate? Like how did that happen?
When it was just gone. It just vanished. it was just like, oh, okay, I should probably just get up and stay up. I knew in my mind if I went back to bed, I would miss my flight.
Okay. And then when you got up, though, because you're still awake, you didn't go back to sleep. You had to physically get up and close and lock the front door.
Yep. Yeah. I had to close the front door back up and lock it again.
Did the cat begin
And
acting normal immediately after this thing was gone?
he kind of stayed aloof for a little while. I mean, he let me give him some pets and stuff, but he didn't really act out of the norm beyond that. And then we never had another experience there after that. It was just like a one and done thing.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Those are sometimes stranger to try to explain. It's much stranger to try to explain than like the house that you brought up. That's a very easy, like try to figure out what's going on. Well, you have an orphanage where there's abuse going on, but what about this dude? And it's only a one and done.
Yeah.
That's very, very odd.
Yeah. There. And then after that, I didn't have any other. I lived in St. Louis for 2 years and then moved back to Wisconsin and then didn't really have any experiences until like 2010 or so. That's when I was actually 2009, moved into a house with an ex-girlfriend. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time. And that's when we saw the shadow being there. She saw it when it came into the bedroom, and I saw it when it left the bedroom. And that was right after we moved in. She saw it kind of like looming over her in bed. I don't think she had like sleep paralysis, but she saw it kind of like looking over her in bed. And I saw it peek back into the bedroom after the fact. And from what I saw its like head, like the silhouette of its head, look around. It was like a white frame of like the door frame. When it peeked in, like its head looked like it looked 2-dimensional. It's the only way I can describe it. It would look like a cutout. Like if I were to look at it from the other way, I wouldn't see it at all. It looked, like a paper cutout of like a head like peeking in, from what I remember. But that place had a lot of weird happenings. She was working at a grocery store. She was at work, and I came home from my work to eat lunch and then walk the dog every day. I came home one day and I walked the dog and, ate a sandwich and then left. And I left something like my phone. And so I circled the block and came back around. We had this hook where we'd hook up the dog leash on every time, we were done walking the dog. I walked in the door and the dog was fine. She wasn't acting weird, but her leash was on the counter and it was tied in 3 knots. And I hadn't done that. Like came back. Yeah, was gone for 2 minutes max. Just circled the block, parked the car, and came inside to grab whatever I forgot. Saw her leash was laid on the counter, tied in like 3 knots, like perfect length in between each 3 knots. And I don't know, we would hear like stomping coming up from the basement stairs, and a lot of the cabinets would just be open the following morning, or it sounded like, dishes being shuffled around, or, I mean, maybe it's a thing from St. Louis that was attached to me. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if it could change shape. Maybe if it didn't want to look like a 3D smoke entity with the 4-inch nose, it's like, I'm going to look like a black cutout this time. I don't know. I mean, it could be something completely different, too.
Maybe it's all gin. Maybe everything is.
Yeah, that's what Rosemary Ellen Guiley thought. She thought that all of this was the gin, which it very well could be. There's no way to know.
It could be. But they definitely like to serve the old trickster element, I guess.
Yes. Yes, they like to scare and terrify if they feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the smoke entity didn't feel like terrifying you, but it sure sounds.
That's the thing.
Creepy.
Yeah. I should have been like I don't know. I just know I wasn't as scared as I should have been. I think I was like more fascinated. Like this thing has just changed my worldview of the paranormal, religion, or whatnot. Like, but I just yeah, it was just right there, and I didn't. It didn't care about me either. It just like wanted me to like not interfere with whatever it was doing, waiting for.
Well, what about your girlfriend
Which is
with
so
this
strange.
2D homie hanging over her bed that time?
Mhm.
Did that scare her?
Yeah, she called it like a shadow man for sure. She's like, I saw a shadow man looking at me when I was sleeping. I don't know the details of like her experience exactly. No, I just remember she had seen it that night, and I had seen it. I guess exit or look back in. Maybe it was before it came in, but I don't remember. But I also don't remember being like totally rattled awake after that either. But you hear a lot of cases of people just going back to bed after some that should shake them to the core.
That's
They,
usually the case,
sometimes I
actually.
think people just go back to bed. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, I guess like I don't remember like getting up and I've been somebody like tried to break into my apartment back in 2006, and he said he was going to come in and murder me, and he was all tweaked out, and he was prying out the storm pane on the window, and he said he was going to come in and like gut my girlfriend and kill me, and like we're face to face. And this is when I was living in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and so like I usually would get up and check the windows and double check the doors again and make sure the house was secure. But like no, I didn't. I don't remember getting out of bed and like doing my routine of like making sure everything's okay.
Yeah, that sounded like a pleasant experience, huh? It's nice.
Oh no, not at all.
Nice man that you met there in lacrosse. That's lovely.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in keeping secure. But
And I would be remiss, and people will yell at me if I don't bring this up, because the three knots tied in the leash could be, I don't know, no one knows,
the
but
mocking
mocking
of
the
the Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is my thought after learning some of that as well, and also like I think symbolically a knot for binding.
Mm-hmm. Because the other stuff sounds like
I remember like
classic haunting stuff. You'd hear footsteps
yeah,
stomping, dishes moving around. What else can you
yeah,
remember?
like poltergeist activity. Yeah, it's one night it sounded like something larger than a squirrel on the wall. It sounded like a human, like kind of like crawling along the wall. It was much larger than like a mouse or a squirrel.
Hmm.
I know that can sound quite large too, even in the woods. But like this thing sounded like a human, like crawling like on all fours on the wall.
It's just your friend from the attic from the first house. I mean,
Yeah,
eh.
it's quite possible.
Yeah,
Anything's possible.
behind a wall does conjure up just dark thoughts of what it could be, and it wouldn't be pleasant
Hmm.
to hear something like that. Would you hear that now? People usually hear things more at night because that's when the TV's off. You're more heightened to hear things. So would it go on during the
Yeah.
day or for sure? Or was this always at night when you guys are laying in bed? You're like, oh my God, here goes the whatever the hell
No,
it
I
is in the
think
wall again.
it wasn't like at the witching hour really for any of my stuff. It wasn't always that. It's like I remember hearing like the children, at like 10 o'clock at night, or maybe even during the day. But like you can hear children playing outside in recess there. But like at that little house, is like that was on my lunch break that I tied the knots. So I get but we would hear the plates. And we would even hear them in the kitchen like at 6, 7 o'clock at night after dinner, like shuffling in the plates or opening up doors and closing doors and stomping up the stairs. That was any time.
I mean, did that stuff freak your
I would say,
girlfriend out? I mean, wasn't she going, we live in a
yeah,
freaking
yeah,
haunted house, we
yeah.
need to move?
No, I think there was like a novelty to it because like I was like, it didn't really, cause harm or anything like that. So I think there was like a novelty to it. And our friends would come over and experience. There were times where like, oh, turn on the lamp in there's like a room in the back kitchen, and it did that for a friend of mine, and it would like open and close like the lid on a garbage can.
Need to teach that thing to do the dishes,
Right.
Like,
Right.
hey, I know the best
I,
trick in the world everyone will love. You load the dishwasher.
we didn't even have a dishwasher there. It could do the dishes though. Why not?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is so...
You're paying no rent.
yeah. You're going to put some work in here, buddy. No, I'm not trying to make light of it. I think that's actually pretty cool that you could actually bring other people in from the out, because some of this stuff is very particular with who it will interact with or show off or whatever you want to term it. It's cool you could bring outside people in and it would still just continue this activity in front of them.
Yeah, because like my buddy Adam, he returned from Iraq, and I hadn't seen him, since he'd been deployed, and he came back and we were just chilling, and I didn't even tell him about the house yet. And he asked me, he's like, who else is living here? I mean, we didn't even like, oh, it sounded like somebody just came up from the basement. I'm like, what are you talking about? 'Cause I think I went to go take a shower and come out, and like we are gonna go out to the bars or something, and like he swore that somebody came up from the basement. I'm like, no, it's just me. My girlfriend at the time, I think she was working or something, or over at her parents or something. Yeah, and he was just like, yeah, weird.
Looks like last but not least, you do have a UFO sighting to talk about.
Yeah, I was seeing my buddy Jason, his mom, and we were over at his mom's apartment. We were out in the back, like fields, kind of like there was an American Legion over there, and we were talking about he had just seen a UFO in the daylight earlier that day, and it was a silver ball up in the sky. And his mom, chimed in and was like, "Yeah, we saw it. We were on the way home from the store. We saw this, giant." She called it like the Death Star. Saw the big, and like it wasn't the moon. And I was kind of giving him shit, and I was like, "Oh, I never see anything." I kind of like looked up at it was the Big Dipper was up in the sky, and there was this star that was out of place. It was kind of like in the center of like the spoon of the Big Dipper. I was like, "What's that?" And then like kind of came towards us, and kind of like it was like one ball, and then I seemed like it kind of like opened up into three to like a triangle, and it kind of like turned and went towards like the military base. But it was like low enough to where it kind of like spun to where a plane can't spin. Kind of like I guess like a frisbee or a boomerang, like spinning, not like fast, but like looked like slow. It went over the thing. We were like, "What the hell was that?" And then we heard like two other voices off another balcony. We're like, "Was that a UFO?" And I'm like, "I have no clue." I'm like, it's so weird because like we were just talking about, not having, and I never got to see a UFO in my life. I'm never gonna see one. And then this thing kind of like manifested, I guess, and circled around. And it's just like learning that other people can like call upon UFOs to, I guess, show up. Is it all? But like then there were other people on this other balcony that did see it too. So I think there were. So it'd be me, Jason, his mom, and then two other people on the balcony, like off to the like left behind us, that saw this thing too.
Have you ever tried to do that again? Maybe go outside and bitch that you don't see as many UFOs as you'd like and see if it happens again?
Yeah, I have tried and it has not worked.
It's worth a shot,
I know.
Because that is extremely odd timing. I mean, extremely.
No, I know, I had just said it. I'm like, I never seen a UFO. I was so jealous of him seeing like a giant ball kind of like coasting through the sky. Literally, it must have been like 25 minutes, after me saying that I never get to see that. We're just kind of like looking up and waiting on another friend, but we like saw it, and other people saw it too, though. But seriously, like 25 minutes before that, like I was just saying, like, oh, I never get to see a UFO. I want to see a UFO, and one showed up.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah,
I wish I could
it
do
was
something like that.
just a black triangle.
Yeah.
It seemed low enough to where we could kind of see like the paneling like on the bottom of it, or like
Oh.
yeah, I mean it was low and close. Because Sparta's right outside of Fort McCoy as well, though. So I don't know. I could have been, I don't know, man-made, the TR3B or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
going towards Fort McCoy or Camp Douglas. Fort McCoy's got some pretty interesting stuff out there too. That's where that one we were doing night training exercises, and he came across that pale crawler out there.
I love stories of pale crawlers.
Oh, same here.
Those things are so creepy. So was this craft always at the
Yeah,
same
apparently.
was this craft that you saw always at the same height until it left your sight?
It came down and like started to kind of like
Yeah.
spin.
Mm-hmm.
It had to have been like, I don't know, 200 or 300 yards above us,
Okay.
and it seemed kind of large, the size of this two school buses, maybe.
And as far as the lights go, because you said it was a one ball and then it went to a triangle, do you think that was a lot of people have renditions of one light underneath, which would essentially be in the middle of the triangle, and then maybe that one just went off. Maybe it has something to do with the propulsion or the
The
energy needed, and then the
or the
lights
other one,
came on at the edges.
that definitely could be, or it could have been like the perspective it came at me. I saw like one light, and then when it kind of
True.
came above me, I saw the three.
Good point.
I think that could be it too, or lights could have been off and then on as well.
I always wonder, especially with it, because a lot of the times, not every time, but a lot of times when we're talking about triangles, your brain does kind of go to a more conventional craft. And so if they
Oh,
don't need lights on these things, then part of me goes, well, I do wonder if it is a psyop in some way or just a test to see how many people will report it. If it's not some kind of a need for the craft itself, for propulsion or anything like that, then why would they want anyone to know that they were up there? Well, to me, it seems like they want to see who's going to report it.
right. Or who's actually going to see it, or if they're intended to be, on a covert mission to
Yeah.
check out, in another intelligent life form. Or because it's like we use lights on our aircraft for communication, so it's like how to communicate that, or are they trying to like fit in poorly too?
Yeah, they're
It's like
like,
they can't get things just right.
yeah, like close guys, no cigar.
Right. Yeah.
Nice try. Yeah, I would say that I lean more towards man-made with a lot of the triangle stuff, but part of me then is also like, well,
Yeah.
did we really come up with that propulsion on our own, or did we steal it from another craft that crashed probably in Ohio somewhere and went to Right Pat, and now we have this as well? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a likely scenario, and the fact it was like right by another military installation as well, unless there were
Right.
things of interest there too. It's like, oh, we made it a little too far west, and we're gonna go east to Fort, or we shot that because it came in pretty quick. I remember that, and then it did slow down as it was kind of going above us, around above the apartment complex.
What were the tiles like? Rectangle, square? What was that like?
I remember it kind of being. I remember it being like square, like paneling. Honestly, that could be my filling in the. Is it? It had. It wasn't. Hmm. I don't remember seeing details of like rivets, but it looked like there were like panels on the bottom, maybe like longer rectangles and like square.
Any kind of noise, any humming, anything like that?
No, no, absolutely silent.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely silent.
Pretty damn
Yeah.
cool. Even if it's ours, I mean, that's very cool. I would like to
Yeah.
see one of those.
I would like to see one again.
Yeah.
And I try and try and try, and I don't get to have those experiences.
That was pretty cool. The timing of that, though, is absolutely amazing. Well, especially where you lived, there's a lot of stories. A lot of weird stuff goes on in those states,
Oh yeah. I live in Winona, Minnesota now, which is pretty close to the Trempolo like Mothman sighting from like the early
Mm-hmm.
2000s, in the Man Bat, and then right by Lake Pepin as well, which is like Pepe. They're like lake monster.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you need to go stand at the edge of the lake and bitch about I never see any lake monsters and see if Pepe will come
All
and
right,
say hello to you.
or go look for Mothman or the Man Bat. Because like people called it Man Bat before, like I guess Monster Quest came in with the Mothman thing. Like people were calling it Man Bat.
Mothman's definitely cooler, but I mean, Man Bat is just as descriptive,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
Man Bat. You're like, Michael Keaton's in Wisconsin? What's happening?
Well, because I think I think everyone just kind of assumed that like Mothman had its place in Point Pleasant at that time, because I think that was at a time before all the Chicago stuff was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Man Bat, yeah. That would also be a cool sighting, I have to say. Although you don't hear a lot of people saying that when they saw a Mothman or a Man Bat, it was very positive. But I still think
Right.
that would be an incredible sighting.
Absolutely.
Like, put me on the list for that. I know it's not supposed to be nice, but or maybe even a harbinger of you're probably maybe out of here soon. But I still think that would be cool. Well, Dylan, anything else that I should have asked or anything else you wanted to share?
No. Haven't had an experience in such a long time until last year, and then but that still could be a human being, still living in the attic of the house, my parents' house.
Messing with the wrong dude, though. I mean, because that guy has got some firepower. He's a cop after all, and probably a pretty good shot. So if there's a squatter in that house, he better be very careful when he's coming down to grab that sandwich.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, really though.
Steal their chips.
Yeah. He's like, I gotta eat these real quiet. I have to be very choosy about what I steal from the kitchen. Yeah, seriously though, that either way, that was a really scary thing to see for you, like realizing, oh, I'm not alone here. Great.
Yeah, because I would just been, if he did come from the attic, like I was just there, like being like, shit, I don't want to clean all this shit out.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, I had to stand in front of that door for like 4 or 5 minutes, just like, man, I don't want to, because that was the next thing I had to tackle, and it was all dusty, and I'm like, man, I don't want to deal with this, because it had to have been like a chore. If they were in the attic, they would have had to have like gone through boxes on boxes to get up there.
Do you ever think about just, going to the house or getting in touch with the guy, with the cop, since you kind of already had a previous experience with him prior to selling the house? Maybe he'd be pretty open to talking to you about stuff.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'm definitely open. I just haven't been that way. I'm over an hour away.
Yeah.
I was commuting there 4 or 5 times a week. I was driving an hour there, an hour back, just to, haul a few things out to the dumpster and, do all the paperwork of, selling a house and, meeting with my realtor and
Yeah. Break
my
time.
mom's payee and, visiting her in the hospital is just like so much. And, a lot of it, I don't know, my guard could have been down too for something to kind of like cling to me, being vulnerable, I guess, to like a psychic attack or something to attach me, attach itself to me. Is it, is it a very trying time? It's like all things are on the table, really.
Yeah. Well, and going off your hitchhiker theory, I mean, he's got very sunken eyes. His hair was falling out, not looking great. I mean, it sounds like someone that maybe that's how they looked right before they passed. And then, he just decided to kind of hang out with you for a little bit, scare the shit out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, they had that like look on their face, like they could have been like in Silence of the Lambs where Clarice goes to visit Hannibal Lecter, and there's all the weird people and like the not weird people, the other jailed criminals, crazy criminals. He looked like he could have been like an extra there,
Really?
kind of like that. Which is why I kind of thought like maybe he came from that nursing home that was just demolished. Like his residence was just destroyed. His haunt is gone, so I'm gonna pick hitch a ride with this guy.
Man.
And go check out his digs.
Yeah, that is a freaky one, Dylan. I'm not gonna lie. That's definitely on the no thanks list right there. Nope. Like you're like, I noped to the driveway. I'm like, yep, that is the proper steps after that, because human or ghost, that was not a nice one. And look at all the other things that you've seen, though. Isn't that funny? Like that. The guy that the one that actually could have been somehow, I don't know how, but a person to hide in him, if he's hiding in the attic for a whole week and he got out somehow, that's the one that got you.
Yeah,
like that's the scariest
out
one
of everything. That is one.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that probably every day since, and I just get that creepy chill, like thinking about that dude's like his face is like greasy hair plug doll hair, and him like looking, and the way he kind of like he looked at me, he had his oh shit moment, and kind of like slunked inside, but he like when he broke his eye contact, he looked down. I remember he like stepped backwards. I don't know. It's all icky.
Was he holding anything?
Yeah, I did not see his hands. I just saw like his upper torso up, but his hands were down.
Yeah, I guess when his face and hair looks like that, it was probably just so shocking you probably couldn't take your eyes off of his face.
Yeah. I remember reaching into my back right pocket and pulling out my box knife, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to step back out because I don't know if he could have a bigger knife, I stepped out into the driveway and called the cops. And I was just kind of bummed that they didn't, find anything to have some sort of closure. I'm just like, I have a lot of work left to do in this house. I can't deal with that right now.
Do you remember what they said? Like when they came out and they're like, there's no one in there. Did you go like, really? Like, did you check everywhere? Do you remember the conversation?
Yeah. They checked under. Yep. He's like, the house is clear. They checked under the stairs because there's like a little cubby under the stairs, which would be the other spot that I think he would have set up shop in. And he's like, but we did not check the attic. Although your windows are secure and your other door is locked. Because there was like that deck door that goes out to the backyard. And that, was still locked and had like a chair in front of it with a Swiffer mop, like leaned against it. And I was already on edge too, because like my mom's boyfriend at the time refused to leave the property. I was afraid like, oh, I'm going to have to go through the whole legal eviction to get somebody off the property. And I didn't have the time to, waste on this. Cause like my mom was, she was in the hospital, but they were holding her until she could get into like a nursing home. But in order to get her to a nursing home, I had to sell the house. So there was a serious time deal. I'm like, I had to get this house done. So I mean, I was putting a lot of time there to get this taken care of. And then I'm like, oh, the wrench in the machine, because I didn't know if he was like, because like when my mom's boyfriend was living with her, he would rent off the basement to random people.
That's safe.
So that's what I was thinking. Like, well, okay, it was one of these people that came back. But yeah, I mean, if they were up in the attic, they were up in the attic until the time I sold the house.
Was
I
the
left the flower there until.
Yeah, you said like a week, right? And nothing was disturbed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, if someone squirreled away enough food and water for a week, I mean, if that's what they do, they're like professional
It's
squatters. They really could have been up there still.
it's quite possible.
Was this one of the entrances like in National Lampoons where it pulls out from the ceiling, or was there a door and then stairs leading up?
It was not like it was kind of like a fake set of stairs. It was kind of like a not like a ramp, but there was like a piece of plywood that walked at or was at like an angle that you kind of like shimmy up and kind of
Okay.
go up around the corner. That you like, then you stand up and you push like a board out of the way, and then you had access to the attic.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
Creepy. Either way, it's creepy. I like that story. Sorry, I do. It's creepy,
Yeah.
but I don't want. I don't want it to happen to me. That's no, thank you.
Yeah.
Dude can stay there. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what's going
Yeah.
on in that house. Even outside of the Hitchhiker, though, that house has so much activity because of what's going on in the vicinity and on the land under the ground. Talking about tunnels and graves and mistreatment and holy crap. Yeah, it does make you wonder if the cop was kind of into that and knew of just that whole area being dark. And he's like, oh, kind of into that.
And he had 2 children that would be living there now. So I'm curious if they're having experiences too,
Yeah.
aside from whatever they could be experiencing.
Yeah.
Especially like, if the ghosts like to play with kids, or if they, focus on, kids their age, or which is quite possible as well.
Well, Dylan, I really appreciate you
If,
reaching out and being willing to come on.
yeah.
And if you do ever hear anything about, your old stomping ground there, get in touch. I would love to hear
Yeah.
any updates that you have.
Oh, for sure.